Hello everyone, I'm Eric Tara Mullins, and I spent roughly 9 years working super hard making my own manga comic called Blithe. And I watch a ton of anime while doing it. I'm gonna put all my work progress on the side here. I watch mostly dubbed, and if ever I'm given some magical free time, subbed. Well, this film must be magical, cause I watched it subbed. Okay, let's talk about the anime film Suzume, and how much we're on the fence about it. Where do I start with this one without giving away too much? I'm gonna go on about things assuming you've at least seen the trailer to the film. First, a mild disclaimer. I enjoyed this movie quite a bit, but I'm not gonna sit here for 10 minutes straight and just gush over it. So it's time I roll up my sleeves that I don't have and be more objective about it. This movie is 2 hours and 1 minute. I think it could have been told in 1 hour and 31 minutes, and I wouldn't mind the extra 30-minute push if it went into character development outside of the main protagonist, whose name is the title of the film. The beginning puts our main protagonist Suzume, this girl, the main girl of the movie, it's her, this is her name, in a somewhat perilous situation as a child. It's a memory from her past, but right from the start, you feel this. The background and foreground artwork are out of this world impressive, which is par for the course when watching an animated film done by Makoto Shinkai. You've probably seen his other films before. If not, well, I'll surely do some reviews to them at one point or another. Just know he's making some strong waves out there in the anime film genre. Really feels as though Japan wants to build him up into the next big thing. His art style is strongly prevalent, especially when you see the sky. It's full of color and life, with stars that shine as brightly as the film Your Name. They use 3D rendered effects quite often. Gone are the days of cel-shaded animation. But to their credit, it looks less and less noticeable with each year. So that's a definite positive, and it's still very well done in this film. The music is good. It helps sell whatever mood you need to be feeling. It's not groundbreaking like the movie Your Name, but it isn't a hindrance to the storytelling for the most part. Suzume, the girl the movie is named after, is on her way to school one day when she bumps into a guy named Souta. The movie isn't named after him, I'd like to point out. He goes around sealing special doors with some magical key he's got. Where does this key come from? Why are so many ruins in Japan that have hidden calamity doors that need to be constantly checked and locked? Why doesn't Suzume have more detailed questions about this random unique stranger in her small ocean town? And why are we asking these questions when it's not the point of the story? He's called a closer. These doors are unique and connect to the giant ghost worm thing that is buried beneath Japan for reasons. But let's just say he's like a sort of ghostbuster, running around taking care of business to prevent large natural disasters. You don't see any other closers throughout the whole movie, mind you. It would have been nice to have a feeling this was larger than just one person. So Suzume hits up one of these nearest room places to her home and finds one of these doors. She checks it out, and it gives her all sorts of crazy flashbacks of stuff from when she was a little kid and the trauma she had gone through involving the loss of her mother. Kinda like the intro scene we got of the movie. She accidentally messes everything up by freeing a godlike spirit magical door guardian White Kitty who no longer wants to do their job. This kitty transforms Souta into the three-legged children's chair that Suzume's late mother had made for her as a child. A walking, talking, superhuman, acrobatic, three-legged children's chair. Now this duo has to go across Japan, tracking down this white kitty in the hopes that Souta can become human again, all while closing chaos doors to prevent earth-shaking calamities to befall the people of Japan. Thus the stage is set for the movie Suzume. Suzume herself is a strong, independent, extroverted person. The film follows things from her perspective 90% of the time, so we really get attached to her, rooting for her to keep pushing forward every step the film takes. She seems to fall head over heels for Souta the second she just looks at this guy. And this is where I start to have a bit of an issue with the romantic elements in this story. Suzume is an in-depth character with a lot going on. Souta, unfortunately, swims on the shallow end of the pool, getting basic character development. He's cute, he goes to school, his family closes rifts in time and space, he wants to be a teacher, he lives with his grandpa who raised him. Is there more to him than this? What of his parents? What about his whole background other than that? Of course not, this movie isn't called Souta, it's Suzume. in case you forgot. Suzume is the name of the movie, not Souta. Not this guy. So the film pulls off a Rocky IV montage, quite a few of them, but for this first one, while traveling to different points of interest for the evil warp doors of evil. But like, I want to see the interactions between Suzume and Souta. I can see they are spending a lot of time together, but without an actual interaction that leads into one person actually falling in love with one another, you could make the argument that Souta has no interest in her whatsoever other than to help him close doors. And I wouldn't have a problem with this low level of emotional development, if the story wasn't so incredibly dependent on the romantic element. But everything seems to ride on it, so I guess we've got a problem here. Souta does show emotion here or there, while eavesdropping on Suzume's conversations with others, at least as much as a chair without any visible features could. But this doesn't feel like a real connection, other than she sure is an emotional trooper. I respect that. You would never have thought he had romantic feelings towards her watching this film at face value. Actually, at one point, she gets to his apartment to find out a little more on the aspect of closing these stargates, and Souta's friend Tomoya shows up. It seemed like he had a key to his place. He just manages to walk right in the front door. He's showing a lot of concern for his just friend. So much so that I actually started to think perhaps they were a couple. Then I started thinking, whoa, and this movie is going to explain that having a crush on someone you know little to nothing about is classic for a young teenager. Then life hits you like a ton of bricks. We don't all find the one when we're 16 years old. But as the story went on, my assumptions seemed to be less and less likely. Near the middle of the film, a ton of craziness happens, and Souta is out of commission for reasons, and Suzume is not having it. The second half of the film is her fixing the main issues she helped cause in the first place, and get the love of her life, Souta, back to doing what he does. And at this point, I still think the movie is gonna give me a curveball. Maybe make it so that Souta has a college girlfriend, or something like that. They go on and on about how good looking he is, how dependable he is, hardworking. I mean, where is Souta's childhood next door neighbor friend that he's supposed to end up with at the end? Or the girl that used to bully him and now they're married? For real, I just find so much of this story implausible based off the shallow character development we got for this guy. And I don't want my girl Suzume hooking up with some trashy guy. Which, by the way, they bring up how boyfriends are the devil more than once in this movie. I'm guessing it's to defend this young, innocent girl, cause there be monsters out there. It was mentioned so often, it almost felt like foreshadowing. But turns out all the guys in this movie are class acts, at least based off of them looking handsome, working hard, and helping pretty girls. Look, I'm really not painting a pretty picture for this movie when the rom element is in focus. But in all honesty, this film really has you going on this adventure across Japan with Suzume. Magical dark doors of the warp and heretical kitty gods aside, everything truly feels whimsical and new as you see it all through the eyes of an innocent traveler. You get so caught up in the story through the animation, music, and appealing protagonist that any other issues can be swept under the rug, perceived as unnecessary, because we're following Suzume's journey, not anyone else's. Hence the name of this movie. It's called Suzume. Suzume's the main protagonist. At one point, Suzume gets to witness the memories and thoughts of Souta. This was it, I thought to myself. This was the moment they could have spent 10 minutes showing and building up the emotional dimensions of this character. But we get it for like one single minute. They Rocky IV montage their way through it. And we really only get a single sentence that kind of like hammers in how he's feeling about everything at the end of it all. Shoot, sorry. I started going off on the romance element again. Okay, getting back on track. Now you can't possibly think a 16-year-old young adult child running around Japan would be permitted to do so, would ya? Well, for those of us that grew up on anime, we know kids can leave the house whenever they feel ready, usually at the age of 6 or 7 years old, and start their lives. But this film was done a little more realistically. Suzume has her aunt, who's been looking after her since her mother passed away. Reluctantly filling those shoes, and like anyone in her position, she's out and about hunting her down to bring her back home. Suzume didn't tell her much, lied to her a bunch of times, and ran away with a magical curse-talking chair, who's also a guy. Of course the aunt just thought she ran away with some good-for-nothing dude. As Suzume's mother was a single parent, we can only assume her aunt's frustrations towards men stem from this. But I would have liked them to build upon this much more, especially since we get a whole road trip adventure with the two, where when their conversations get real, I was hoping this would have been brought up. However, their conversations rallied around raising or being raised by someone who isn't your biological mother. It was emotionally hard and very real. At this point in the movie, the road tripping is all car-based and it's slow, with more Rocky IV montages to depict their long 8-hour journey across the top half of Japan. This whole section could have easily been cut out of the movie. I understand what the director was going for with it, but I would have rather seen less montages and more actual interactions between Souta and Suzume. The divine white kitty god could have carried her to their end destination of the movie, or she could have taken another train to get there, or maybe her aunt could have just rented a car and just the two of them would have road tripped together. With such a long ride, they could have been forced to have conversations that represent the feelings they're having towards one another. This car portion of the film also showcased a ton of Japanese music. Almost felt like aggressive advertising, as it took precedence over most of the road trip and really ran the clock. And having the best friend do all the driving and holding a more prominent role now made me think once more that maybe he was romantically involved with Souta? I have best friends. I would do a lot for them. More than once in my life, some people have looked at us and thought that we were a couple. But this is just upon first glance. The more that they get to know us, the more they would realize pretty quickly we aren't together in that sense. This is where having multi-dimensional written characters plays such an important role. But the way they wrote this friend and Souta are so one-dimensional, it just gave off a lot of mixed signals. Okay, moving on from the romance element for real this time. The aunt actually has quite a few layers to her, and I would have liked to see her more because of this. Adopting a kid at the age of 28 and focusing her life on work and making this kid's life good after losing her whole world and her single mother, I mean, she's still losing her sister. From an emotional writing perspective, this material is gold. And as for the almighty white kitty god, he's not at his post anymore because of reasons involving Suzume. And later in the film, you get to meet the even almightier black kitty god. Why is he bigger? Why is he stronger and unbound to his post? I don't know, but he seems to show continued interest in his job protecting Japan. These two beasties clearly make the yin and yang with their colors and personality. It's pretty on the nose. Speaking of such personalities, I actually really like the white kitty. His basic reasoning for abandoning his position makes sense, and after 1,000 years of doing such a job, I think we can all relate to an extent. It's also very refreshing to see an antagonistic character playing this role, but only due to circumstances. He has no malice or ill will towards anyone or anything. It's just his nature. Finally, the movie comes to its end. It was pretty emotional and definitely struck some feels with me. The build up towards the final climax made everything very satisfying. There was an amazing what I didn't really see coming. Personally, I would have done the more obvious choice to make things more well-rounded as a story, perhaps involving her missing, lost, and deceased mother, but this end was fine and worked well for a film titled after the character we've grown to love and followed to hell and back. I'm also a sucker for real closure, which we get mostly in the form of scenes playing on the side of the end credits. But I'll take what I can get. I seriously thought it was just going to end similarly to the movie Your Name, but they pushed that extra step further and I'm very happy they did. I always love that extra step at the end of any story. Obviously, I'll be putting this extra step at the end of my manga Blithe. 7 more years to go. I got this. My final thoughts. The movie kept me captivated from start to finish, with exceptions to the car road trip during the second half, which was a little slow. Until it wasn't. The character development was only okay, but the overall story and thrilling adventure was awesome, and very well directed. I'd personally rate it better than Weathering You, but not as good as Your Name. I wouldn't even say close. Your Name. That movie is really top shelf for me personally. If you like my video, even just a little, why not think about hitting that like and that subscribe button? Maybe you could hit this little bell and that way you'll be notified whenever I come out with new things. Thanks so much for watching and have an awesome rest of your day. Oh, one last thing to mention for you degenerates out there. She does indeed sit on Souta when he's in his chair form. She then gives him this smug face, showing this country gal knows exactly what degenerates desire in life.